Raiola takes a snap, fade route, back run to the end zone, 50-50 ball! Touchdown, Huskers! Nebraska wins its 5th national championship.
Giving you an inside look at everything going on in Husker Nation. This is the KLIN Husker Hour.
Kicks and deals the 2-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Strike 3. Jackson Brockett has the first 9-inning no-hitter for the Nebraska Cornhuskers since 1954, and he did it on his 12th strikeout.
Sunset, got it! Thunderdog, and then one! Exclamation point! Pump the brakes!
Now your hosts, KLIN contributor Cole Stukenholtz and sports director Nate Rohr.
Good Saturday morning. Welcome to another edition of the KLIN Husker Hour. A very busy Saturday, as they always seem to be anymore. We've got a streaking Husker men's basketball team up to the 2 line in most brackets. Yes, you heard that right. They've got another game today against the leading scorer in the country on the road. We'll see how they do. We'll chat about that. We'll chat about that with Wilson Moore of the Omaha World Herald, who was out in Chicago. Not sure which part of Chicago. I know Matt McMaster would get real upset with me if I called Skokie Chicago. We'll see where Wilson stands. And Nebraska will be in action in Evanston a little bit later on this afternoon. But of course, there's a lot to get to on the football side. And Nate, I appreciate you holding down the show last week while I was out. You know, sometimes you have to take a beat. You know, you have to step away from what you're comfortable with. Even if you go to Bellevue West, you take a beat, you come back. I mean, enough about me and Daniel Kalin both.
Oh yes.
But now I'm back, and so is Daniel Kalin, and so are quite a few folks coming to Lincoln for this next football season. The transfer portal is now closed. There are still potentially decisions to be made about folks who are in the portal and where they may or may not go. And of course, there may be paperwork filed late, and we may not know about somebody who is able to get into the portal before the deadline closed. But I think for the most part, we're pretty set on what Nebraska has lost, what Nebraska has gained. And you and I, Nate, talked a lot about the lines. And I want to start there because Nebraska did work on the lines. If you look up and down their transfer portal gains list, there's 3 offensive linemen, there's 3 defensive linemen, and all 3 of both sides of the ball are from Power 4 schools. You've got on the offensive side, Brendan Black from Iowa State, Paul Mubenga from LSU, and Tree Babalade from South Carolina. On the D-line, you've got Anthony Jones from UCLA and 4 other Big Ten schools, I think. Joshua Whittington from Pitt, and Owen Stoudemeyer, who committed yesterday from Boston College. So initially, that's good, right? You get more guys on the lines that we said they needed. Obviously, other positions to address, but that's a good start, right? You have to. I'll say the same thing I said about Nebraska's D-line hire. You were bad in the red zone. You were bad against the run. They addressed those issues, I thought, with the Rob Orich hire. With Nebraska needing help on the lines, I think their heart's in the right place on that.
Yeah, you never know how transfers are going to turn out specifically, but you do feel like if you were going to go after a certain class of guys, these would be the guys you would go after. I especially like what they did on the offensive line. I think that'll translate very well where you've got 2 guys at your tackle spots that have SEC starting experience. Now you have a year with Elijah Pritchett under his belt. It took him half a year to get his legs under him, and it just feels like that's what it takes sometimes for these transfers. Rare is the occasion that you plug a guy in and he immediately works. So, especially as the year goes on, I think this is a line that's going to develop and come together very well. I like Brendan Black. I think there's a lot of good history there, and I think he can be a big contributor. So it feels like they did a really good job of addressing, especially the offensive line, specific spots giving themselves some options to where they can sub guys in and out. Defensive line, they just needed people. They just needed it was supermarket sweep because if you're going off of what you saw last year, I don't know that you saw anybody that really blew your socks off, you know.
Yeah.
So they needed to grab guys. They were able to do it. And you're hopeful that Rob Orich can develop them into a pretty good defensive line. So you do like the fact that they went and directly addressed what they needed to address.
Yeah. Let's look at quarterback as well, because Nebraska's really kind of reloaded at that position.
Yep.
The news earlier this week also with former Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola committing to Oregon, and then shortly after that, current Oregon quarterback Dante Moore announcing he is staying for another season in Eugene. So Raiola presumably backing up another guy next season, which he did not do here in 2 years as a starter. But Nebraska goes to the portal and gets Anthony Calandria from UNLV, who also had starting experience at Virginia. He was the Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year. They also go to Virginia for Daniel KLIN, and they also go to Vegas for a high school quarterback, Tanner Vibable. They're only going to Vegas and Virginia anymore for quarterbacks. That's it. But in all seriousness, you have Latif, Calandria, and KLIN, all three guys who have started games at the Power 4 level. I can't imagine you have too many schools across the country that can say that. So that's a good starting point. They've got experience at this level, and they're going to have options regardless of who wins the job, regardless of who maybe your favorite or maybe this staff's, leader in the clubhouse, if you will. They're going to have options both at starter and at backup that they should feel pretty comfortable with as far as going out and getting a Big Ten win on a Saturday.
No doubt. I mean, TJ Latif has done it. TJ Latif has won a Big Ten game. Now, it was against a UCLA team that wasn't very good, but he did it. And Calandria was a conference player of the year. And, we take the group of five as one amorphous blob, but, the Mountain West is probably the best group of five conference, maybe along with the Americans. So you're talking about a guy who played pretty well in the year that he had at UNLV, and you're hopeful. Sometimes he had kind of a bumpy start at Virginia. He turned the ball over quite a bit. You're hopeful a year at UNLV, some of Dan Mullen's coaching, and just some success rebuilt his confidence. He seems like a guy whose confidence is probably just fine. But at any rate, you like the fact that you don't feel the conversation around Nebraska, and part of the reason why it felt like Dylan Raiola was so reluctant to run was the idea that if he went down, Nebraska was in a lot of trouble. Everything was built around him. Everything was predicated around him. And while you're starting quarterback's always going to matter, and he's always going to have an outsized influence on what you're doing offensively, at the same time, you feel like with these other two guys, Calandria behind with KLIN and Latif behind him, you can take a few more chances, and that may allow Calandria to run a little bit more. And if Calandria runs a whole lot in the Big Ten, I worry the meter's going to be running on that. So it is good to have guys behind him who have at least played some and have some Power 4 conference experience.
Yeah, there's no doubt that if you don't, he's got the rushing ability. Calandria, he ran for over 800 yards in the Mountain West last year, and that's not going to be what he'll do in the Big Ten, I don't think.
Right.
But still, that's a weapon you can't ignore. And if we're being honest, I feel like that's sort of a weapon of TJ Latif's that they did ignore for 4 starts. Mm-hmm. Now, the Iowa game, the injury, we all know that, but he ran the zone read to start the UCLA game, didn't hardly run it again. Yeah. He had the one scramble for a touchdown against Penn State. He didn't run a whole lot in the bowl game against Utah either. So that aspect of the offense is the big question for me this offseason. How much will Dana Holgorsen be designing this offense around quarterback run game. Designed quarterback run game. It's all well and good. If you have a guy with escapability, you get out of the pocket, you can create after the play. Heck, Dylan Raiola did that. Mm-hmm. So you didn't have to change the offense for that aspect, but get more, option, zone read, designed QB draw, 5 wide and go up the middle for 3rd and 2. Whatever the case may be, that has to be part of the plan next season. Nebraska can't afford for it not to be, because they didn't really do a whole lot other than offensive line and quarterback in the portal on that side of the ball. There's one other guy outside of those two positions they added, and that's a wide receiver, Quasi Gilmore from UCLA. No running backs added yet. There may be still somebody potentially playing on Monday who has local ties that people keep kind of wondering about. Maybe still could be on his way. They didn't add a tight end. They're rolling with the guys they got. So offensively, you have to obviously develop the guys you have on the roster, which they're certainly betting on again. Mm-hmm. And you need the QB run game to be a factor, because it is a great equalizer. We talk all the time when Nebraska faces a mobile quarterback. Oh my gosh, this defense is really going to struggle. Their quarterback can run. It stresses a defense. Nebraska has to do that to opposing defenses if they want to have success on offense, if they want to open other things up for other players on the offense. They can't afford to ignore it. And I feel like that's what they did when they had that option available to them with TJ Lateef those last 4 games.
I'm going to push back a little bit on how much quarterback run you do, though, because I feel like it needs to be there, but I'm still, even though we talked about, hey, KLIN has experience, Lateef has experience, hopefully that emboldens them to use it some, but do it just enough to where the defense has to respect it, because even though, like I said, those 3 guys have played, Calandria is the clear starter. I mean, I don't think going into spring ball, I don't think this is a quarterback battle. It's Calandria's job to lose. And so, while you want him to run it, I mean, Eric Crouch ran it 10 times a game. Like that's the absolute high water mark of what a quarterback needs to run. It should be somewhere in the 5 to 7, but it should be a reliable 5 to 7. And there ought to be a lot of plays where they have to think, okay, is he running it, instead of the zone read action where they're 90% sure the ball's going to Emmett Johnson, as was the case this year. So I want the quarterback run to be a present and intentional part of this game plan, but it's got to be a side dish. It can't be what you rely on. The worry is with the question at running back, and yeah, we're all waiting for the national championship game to see what Brown at Miami does, see if he comes home. If he doesn't, I'm a little worried about a run game that's Mekhi Nelson and Isaiah Mosey. There's just not enough there.
Yeah, I mean, Connor Booth, Quentin Ives, they've got guys that they are trying to instill confidence in, I feel like. Sure. I don't think Matt Rule's going to do what he does, right? He's going to say what he says. I don't buy it. I just don't. I think they've got to add somebody at that position. And whether it's Marty Brown or someone else that we have yet to hear of, they need to do something. So I'm very curious to see what happens at running back. And there's other positions that I want to get to with this transfer portal, including the most important, long snapper. They've done it again, Nate. Hey,
got one.
You didn't hear much about him last year, right? That's a good thing. So we'll talk a little bit more about the incomings. We will talk about some outgoings as well, plus maybe the most impactful outgoing that could happen, and that's on the coaching staff. We'll do that, plus plenty of Nebraska ball when we come back here on the KLIN Husker Hour.
Big news.
talking with current and former Huskers and those that cover the Big Red. This is the KLIN Husker Hour on Lincoln's Husker Radio, 1499.3 KLIN.
More of the Nebraska incoming transfers. There was, I think, a lot to do on that front seven. It wasn't just the D-line, Nate. The linebacking position, I think, left a little to be desired this year. The secondary was certainly the strength of that defense. So what did Nebraska do? They went and got some guys at linebacker, including Owen Chambliss, I think, is the biggest addition. Was the leading tackler on that San Diego State defense last season under Rob Orich. So he's going to be in Lincoln. Dexter Foster from Oregon State and Will Hawthorne from Iowa State. Hawthorne was a guy that they wanted out of high school. He's just spent a year in Ames, and then Matt Campbell left. So Will Hawthorne came over here. And then safeties, Dwayne McDougal, another San Diego State guy, and then also Jason Shiggs from Towson, and a cornerback, Victor Evans from FIU. A lot more incomings on the defensive side, which I think we all expected with a new defensive coordinator. The back seven reloading as well.
Yeah, the DBs, you were going to need some new pieces to come in there just to reset that. You lose Hartzog, you lose Sierra Wright, you lose Singleton. So you were going to need some pieces. I do like the fact that you have a guy in Chambliss at linebacker that was at San Diego State that's run this defense before, that knows the defense. I assume that Chambliss is going to be the green dot next year. He'll be the guy taking the signals, signaling the plays. And then you have the safety McDougal from San Diego State as well. So those positions where communication and understanding what you're running are so critical. Not that it's not important for the line, but defensive line is a lot of seek and destroy. It's pretty simple. It's simple. It's not easy. It's tough to do, but your assignments are generally pretty clear. Whereas working in the back seven, you've got to know where you're supposed to go, and having a guy on both those levels who've run this defense, who know this defense, and who've been able to succeed in this defense, I think is going to be a real help next year. So I think that's the biggest benefit Nebraska got from those defensive transfers in.
Yeah, and as far as the portal goes, there's another piece to it as far as the team that you'll see next season, and it's retention of your own guys, re-recruiting the players on your own roster. And Matt Rule actually on Sports Nightly on KLIN yesterday just ran through a few of those guys that are important that they kept because they are good young players. Ja'Cory Barney, Cortez Mills, and Isaiah Hunter, none of those guys left. Then on defense, Cade Petschak, he stayed. Riley Van Poppel, he's still here. Williams Nwaneri is going to get his second year in the system after transferring over from Missouri. Donovan Jones didn't go anywhere. Caleb Benning, Rex Guthrie, some young safeties they like. They're still here. Vincent Shavers is still here. And so you have that to point to as well in terms of, hey, this was a good thing that came out of this. And I will jest when I say this, but I'm not really. Do you know the name Kevin Gallick out there, Husker fans? Good. I mean, that it's good that he's not a household name, right? He was the long snapper last year. You remember 2024, people? It was terrible.
Yes.
Last year it was better. The guy
last year it was reliable.
That's right. The guy now is Jack Wills from Michigan State. He's the long snapper. Know his name today. Hopefully you don't need to know his name tomorrow. That's right. That's the long snapper position. I want to talk more about special teams now because the thought, the rumor, the report is that Nebraska is potentially about to be out as special teams coach, with Mike Eckler rumored to be going to USC. And I'm not going to lie to you, this one hurts. I think this is the bigger outgoing of the team, bigger than Dylan Raiola, bigger than anybody. Keona Davis, take your pick. Mike Eckler transformed the special teams from terrible to at times awesome and mostly above average this season. And it we talked about it for 2 years in the Matt Rule era. Special teams probably cost you a couple wins a year. It probably won Nebraska a couple of games last season. They're potentially looking to just basically hire within. Josh Martin's the name that Matt Rule's tossed out there. I worry that you're going to backslide on this position now without Mike Eckler, somebody who has been so awesome at that position. And for whatever reason, he may potentially be on his way out of Lincoln. It's a big blow, and I really do think it hurts Nebraska in 2026.
Oh, no question. No question. I mean, like you said, the turnaround was immediate and dramatic, and it just felt like Nebraska, was building something there and could be good there. And Mike Eckler, everywhere he's gone, has been really successful. I know people have brought up, hey, he only stays in a place a couple, 3 years, whatever. Just goes to show everywhere he's gone, his special teams have gotten better and gotten better immediately. Yeah. And so while it sounds like efforts were made to keep him, at the same time, he's out the door by all accounts. So, you don't want to lose a guy that is that valuable to this team and to this program. And I wasn't able to listen to the interview, but from the newspaper stories that have come out since, there were a couple of quotes pulled out of there about, being more worried about the whole of the team as opposed to the glory of the special teams and all that. And I cringe at that a little bit because, look, I get wanting complementary football, right? You want your defense to feed your offense. You want your offense to feed your special teams, etc. But, it was clear that the special teams unit was helping. The one sort of the worst performance, the black mark on the resume, was that Utah game and kickoff return, where Ja'Cory Barney kind of inexplicably returned 2 kickoffs from the end zone, didn't get to the 20 on each. But those are 2 returns in a bowl game where you were a heavy underdog and didn't have a very good chance to win. And what was going to win that game for you? A big special teams play. I didn't like that Nebraska was returning it, but I see what they were trying to do there. And where a guy makes that big a difference in 1 year, whether or not, there was intra-office squabbling, or maybe you didn't like how aggressive or showy he was, or whatever. Fact of the matter is, he worked. He succeeded. And I wonder if this is sort of a larger effort by Matt Rule. You think about how he's trying to diffuse focus and attention from singular figures. I mean, last year, you came into the year with Dylan Raiola as the focal point of this offense. You came into the year with Mike Eckler kind of the focal point of the special teams. As the year went on, Emmett Johnson was the focal point of everything. Mm-hmm. And I think Matt Rule, in trying to build culture and trying to establish what he's going to build here, is really trying to split things off, make it more diffused, make it more the team over certain individuals. And so maybe this is where it makes sense, where you say, okay, Mike, if they're going to, but at the same time, they made every effort to keep him, or they made efforts to keep him. Every effort, we'll never know. But they made efforts to keep him, and he wasn't receptive. So it came to an impasse, and it appears now that somebody who I think is really good at his job, and one of the few unimpeachably great pieces of this program that was carrying over from last year to the 2026 season, he's out the door. What are you going to do?
Yeah, and look, Rule said just last night on Sports Nightly, Eckler was offered a long-term extension to be one of the highest paid special teams coordinators in the country. And so the Nebraska, like you said, made efforts to keep him. And hey, it is what it is at this point. And there are things that you'll keep, that you'll retain. Obviously, Cal Cunanan and Archie Wilson. I don't know that special teams coordinator leaving means that that your portal as a special teamer is real. I don't know how that works. I don't think that's how.
I don't think that's the case. No.
So presumably you still have those guys, and then you also have whatever things schematically Eckler was doing. Obviously, those are known now to this staff and Rule and whoever. If he does hire from within, he promotes that. Those folks will know how Eckler was doing what he was doing. So it's not a total loss, but boy, I worry that there's a little bit of a backslide there. Hopefully, at least the way that I would try to resolve it if I'm a Husker fan is like, hey, maybe at the very least, the floor now, after seeing what you could do and seeing Eckler in action here, maybe now the floor is average, right? Instead of 2023 and 2024, the floor being like
bad
in the hundreds nationally. Maybe we've risen that floor just a little bit. And in terms of a few other transfer portal departures, obviously we know about Dylan Raiola. Raiola is gone. And then offensively, there really weren't too many transfer portal departures. You obviously lost Raiola, and I can't think of any others on the offensive side other than like Jason Machachok left as a backup offensive lineman. And then defensively, there's certainly more there with obviously an outgoing defensive coordinator. Keona Davis is no longer with the program. There were a couple of defensive players who went into the portal and then came back out. So not really a whole lot of outgoing, but at any rate, and Willis McGahee's another one to say he went in and then came back, which means he'll be on the team for next year. So that's kind of a roundup of where things stand. So I mean, I'm very much of the wait and see mindset right now, just because it was supposed to make, there was this big jump that was supposed to happen last year, and then you lose the 3 games at the end of the season the way they did. I'm optimistic about some of the additions that they made. I think their head's in the right place in terms of the defensive coordinator hire and the priorities that they appeared to make on the offensive and defensive lines. But long term, they got to go do it. There's no other way around it. They got to go do it on the field in 2026.
Yeah, and the honeymoon is over. There needs to be results. Matt Rule knows that. That's why he's changed coordinators. That's why there seems to be a greater urgency about everything in this offseason. I mean, the University of Nebraska expects better than 7-5. And unfortunately, next year, that would constitute a pretty good year. You hate to say it, the way the schedule looks, 7-5 would be pretty good with where the talent is, with where the program is. And that's not going to satisfy a lot of people. So the question is, are you able to do enough in 26, even if you end up at 7-5, to where 27 people believe a little more, and then 28 you're hopeful that they can make a jump, because at this point you're slogging through a really tough schedule. You're slogging through a schedule where you have 3 playoff teams on it. Yeah. And it's going to be tough to get your head above water, especially with how tough the rest of the league is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The honeymoon over with Matt Rule, perhaps the Matt Rule with Husker fan marriage, a little bit rocky right now. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, there's another Husker fan, Husker coach relationship. The flame has been relit. They went to couples therapy. They worked through some issues, and now, oh my, it is hot again. In college basketball, it's all about Nebraska right now. Yeah. And Fred Hoiberg he's got little hearts around him when Husker fans see him walking out onto the floor. We're going to talk about the strong relationship with this university right now. It is Nebraska ball time when we come back. In action again today, 17-0, 21 straight, a 2-seed in bracketology. We're talking hoops next year on Husker Hour.
Oh.
Your Saturday morning source for everything Huskers is right here. You're listening to the KLIN Husker Hour on Lincoln's Husker Radio, 1499.3 KLIN.
We'll have Wilson Moore joining us in our next segment to talk a little bit about Nebraska's matchup with Northwestern and the run that they've been on. But Nate, I'm still trying to equate this with reality. I'm looking at Ken Palm. I'm looking at ESPN's bracketology. I'm looking at the bracket matrix. I'm looking at T-Rank on Bart Torvik's side. I'm looking at everywhere. And Nebraska is a 2-seed. Nebraska is a 3-seed at worst. Like, what is this world we're living in? There's only 3 unbeaten teams now after Vandy went down. Iowa State got rocked on Tuesday when Nebraska was whooping up on Oregon. And here we are. And the Huskers are a 5.5-point favorite out at Northwestern today. No reason to think that they won't continue to do what they've done, which is be the tougher team, be the more experienced team, be the more together team, and get out of places with a W. As Hoiberg says, boys win at home and men win on the road. And that's what Nebraska is looking to do today to keep this thing going.
Yeah, they've shown remarkable toughness to do what they've done on the road, to be able to go to the Breslin Center, to Assembly Hall, to Champaign, and come out of there with a win. And you know, Northwestern is a team that doesn't really turn the ball over, but you know, compared to those other challenges, this one looks relatively tame. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it's certainly easier than the prior ones that they've faced. So you feel good about their odds. I mean, look, someday you have an off day, and that may be today, that might be the next one against Washington, might be down the road. But, you know, just stacking theirs versus ours and looking at it on paper, this is a game that Nebraska ought to be able to win. And that in and of itself is sort of a nice test for them, because they can then, you know, how do you deal with success? Northwestern's gunning for Nebraska. What a world where we're saying that during the basketball season. You know, if Nebraska loses this game, their students rush the floor. When has Nebraska been floor rushed?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So add that to the list of weird situations, things that we're dealing with here. But, how do you deal with a target on your back? How do you deal with being the hunted? And I trust this team to be able to deal with it. This is a bunch that is very mature, very businesslike, has handled that situation really the entire season. They've handled everything. And they've even been the hunted for a couple weeks at this point. So I trust them to go to Northwestern and be able to win this game. It's just a matter of doing it, which is again, simple, but not easy.
Yeah. I forget which site this was. I read this earlier this week. Nebraska's had 5 games this year where they were given at the start of the game, like based on the metrics and the efficiency ratings and all that, less than 30% chance to win the game. 5 times. And of course, they won all 5 of those games.
Right.
So looking at there's Bart Torvik where he kind of predicts the rest of the season. There's 2 games where Nebraska is a quote unquote heavier underdog. It's at Michigan and at Iowa. They're still a slight favorite, actually, at home for Illinois, at home for Purdue. And then the projected record at the end of the season, 26-5. 27-4 is on the table. Like, you start to think about this, like, where's this thing end up? 26 wins in the regular season? That's a school record. 26-8. 26-8 was the 91 team that was a 3 seed. And that doesn't even count what they could do in the Big Ten tournament, which they are right now trending for a top 4 seed, wouldn't have to play until Friday. They didn't even make the Big Ten tournament last year, Nate.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's a whole new world.
I keep going back to this. When opposing coaches are talking about Nebraska after they've been beaten by Nebraska this season, the guy who comes up the most is Sam Hoiberg. And you saw it on display against Oregon. He had 5 steals at halftime.
Yeah.
Ended up with 6, which is a career high. He also had to leave the court briefly in the first half with Connor Esijan. If you look up his social media, he tells you what happened there. But Sam Hoiberg, there were times where he grabbed one loose ball and just took it back down and nobody stopped the ball and he just drove to the hole and scored. Mm-hmm. He's got another play where it's basically a one-on-one with 2 guys trailing and Hoiberg's one of the trailers. He gets a hand on the ball somehow, busts it free, and Nebraska turns it over and goes the other direction. He is enough of a threat from 3 to where you can't just slough off of him. And he is the king of driving inside and kicking out to Rink, Price, Jamarcus, Bearkay. I don't care who it is. He is one of the nation's leaders in assist to turnover ratio, and I think is leading the nation in that's the guy who I don't want to play right now.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to think that he was absolutely an afterthought. Hey, coach's kid, whatever, he's walking on. He's not going to be a factor. And here he is as a 5th-year senior, and he is the straw that stirs the drink for one of 3 unbeaten teams here sitting on January 17th.
It's a crazy world to think about. And, he's the sort of player Nebraska just hasn't had, which is weird to say because from a talent standpoint, Nebraska's had plenty of guys who are more talented than him, but you feel like they've had a scorer like Bryce Sanford. I mean, they probably haven't had a big man as versatile as Rink Mast, but where it really is, where a difference is really being made is Sam Hoiberg turning the other team over. Is Hoiberg, being a pest? Fred soft pedaled the usage of that word, but that's what he is. That's who he is, and it's meant as a total compliment because he messes up the other team's offense all the time. And that as Fred noted, when your offense is a whole lot easier to run off of defensive rebounds and off of takeaways than it is going 94 feet, taking the ball out of the net. And Sam Hoiberg is one of the primary reasons why Nebraska has been able to start a lot of possessions with defensive rebounds and steals. And even beyond the turnovers he creates, what about the times when he pokes a ball free and it rolls to one of their guys and he jacks up a bad shot because everything's rushed and everything's out of rhythm? I mean, it would be fun to try and keep track of how many defensive possessions Sam Hoiberg influences, because I'll bet it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. That would be the technical term for it. A lot.
A lot.
Yeah, we're about to give you, dear listener, a lot of one Wilson Moore of the Omaha World Herald. He's in Chicago for the Northwestern Nebraska game. He's going to join us right after this to chat all things Huskers when we come back here on the KLIN Husker Hour.
If you have
giving you an inside look at everything Huskers. This is the KLIN Husker Hour on 1499.3 KLIN.
The hottest sports team in the world takes their show to Evanston, Illinois today, and Nebraska will be taking on Northwestern. It's a 3 o'clock tip. You'll hear pregame coverage right here on KLIN starting at 2 o'clock. And on the scene is a good friend of the show, Wilson Moore. Wilson, good morning. I know you're in a hotel. I have to ask for our mutual friend, Matt McMaster, specifically which town are you in right now?
I am in Des Plaines, Illinois, which was a place I had never heard of before a few days ago, but it's a reasonable distance from Evanston, easy enough drive later this afternoon, so can't complain.
All right. Well, we'll have to tell Matt that you're in between Evanston and you're a little further west than Skokie, which is where our dear friend Matt is from. Okay. Well, when you make the drive over to Evanston, you're going to see a 17-0 team. They cannot be beaten so far. What to you has been the driving factor in Nebraska staying unbeaten so far this season?
To me, it's just the collective temperament and the poise of this group. You've seen it so many times, especially on the road. I think when they were down against Ohio State, kind of fairly late in the second half, going down 16 to Illinois, even Michigan State, they were down at the last media timeout. Just a team that doesn't panic, that knows how to finish games, that knows how to win close games, and I think that's been the biggest thing so far. There's maybe a little hint that this would be the case when they built a roster made up of this many guys who have played a lot of college basketball and have played a lot in the Big Ten. But now you're seeing it in action. The group just doesn't panic, knows itself, knows its strengths, knows its weaknesses, and just figures it out throughout a game.
How replicable is this? I mean, we're all enjoying the ride of 25-26 right now. But, this feels pretty unique where you've got Rink Mast in his fifth year. You've got Jamarcus Lawrence. You've got, Sam Hoiberg, who's the coach's kid and knows his role front, back, up, and down. How can this be the rule for this team, or how do you replicate it without the actual age?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to replicate, and the one who I kind of zero in on that is Rink Mast. He has a very distinct skill set. That's not just a skill set you find anywhere. And I'm sure at the end of this season, Nebraska is going to look for that skill set, a versatile big man who can stretch the floor and initiate and, be a leader and just do all the things that Rink Mast does. But guys like that don't grow on trees. Yeah. So to answer your question, Nate, I don't know how year in, year out, realistic it is to get a team like this, just when you consider him. And even I'd throw Sam Hoiberg in there too, of just a guy who, there are plenty of energy hustle guys out there, but someone who also is steady with the ball like Hoiberg and knows the offense and knows how to run things and just, makes the right plays at all times. There's some pretty distinct skill sets and, skill sets that are kind of born by guys spending a lot of time in this system. Everyone knows what to do and how to play with each other. So that's certainly going to be, I can't say I've thought about this a whole lot, but, the challenge to Nebraska at the end of the season once the portal opens.
Wilson Moore joining us from Des Plaines, Illinois, ahead of Nebraska at Northwestern a little bit later on this afternoon. Wilson, if you had to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do Big Ten teams hate Braden Frager right now?
He's up there. I mean, I'll at least like a 7 or an 8. And I think that was kind of, in a weird way, the best case scenario of his Nebraska career. I remember thinking, like, before the season, like, if everything goes well for him, like if he plays the way, he hopes to play and that Nebraska hopes he plays, other teams are gonna hate this guy. That's the edge that he plays with, and you're seeing it right now. In a weird way, I think that's necessary to this team. This team has a bunch of guys who are, adults and, maybe have, like I mentioned, that composure and poise that they collectively have. I think it's necessary to have one sort of wild card in there, and that's been Braden Frager so far.
As you look at this matchup today with Northwestern, I mean, they're 0-6 in the league. They have one big score, but that's about it. But they take really good care of the ball. How is Nebraska going to have to adapt to a team that takes as good a care of the ball as the Wildcats?
Yeah, Nebraska's going to have to be disciplined. They can't chase steals. They can't get out of control defensively, hunting turnovers and trying to recreate what they did against Oregon. If they do that, it's got to just come organically and within the flow of the game. Northwestern, like you mentioned, doesn't have any Big Ten wins this year, but they've been in just about every game. I watched them play Illinois. They play hard there. They're generally pretty sound, and you figure a couple of those games, those 1 or 2 score games they lost, could have had the result could have flipped there. So, but I'd say the biggest thing for Nebraska is just discipline, maintaining their system and, what the scouting report calls for, and not getting away from themselves defensively.
Wilson, I think we did this with you in the off season. I asked you to tier Big Ten basketball teams for us. And I believe, if I remember right, it was Purdue on the first tier all by themselves. Then down below that, you had a couple more. Where's Nebraska fall right now if you're tiering Big Ten teams?
I think right now Nebraska's in that first tier. I mean, I think it's hard to – there's a part of me that still thinks Michigan is the best team in the conference, even though they've lost a game. But I would say right now that first tier is Michigan and Purdue. And I think you can certainly argue that Nebraska's also in that top tier with those top 3 teams. If not, then the second tier, I would say Illinois and Michigan State. And I think there's a fairly substantial drop off after that. I think those 5 teams, I think, are, depending on how selective you want to get in your tiers, are either the first tier or the first and second tier. And then I think from there, that's when you get down into Wisconsin, Iowa, not quite as high level as those first 5.
Look, not everybody can beat Wisconsin by 30 at home. Sometimes you lose to Wisconsin at home. It's okay, Michigan.
Yep. Hey, we're looking ahead to the end of the season and where this team's going to crack out seed wise. If you had to make a guess, what seed line does this team end up at?
I'll go with the 2, 2 or 3. I know seeing some projections like Mike DeCourcy at Fox has him on the 1 seed line. That
he
feels
knows
a
what
little.
He's doing.
What? Yeah.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, but I just think within the flow of the season, there as while it's been all highs so far, through 17 games, there's still 14 to go in the regular season, and there's going to be some give and take throughout the season. So I think Nebraska ends up as like a 2 or 3 line, probably in Oklahoma City once the tournament starts.
All right, we'll get you on this. Would you rather Oklahoma City or St. Louis? Because both of those are, I think, on the table right now for Nebraska.
Yeah, I'll go with Oklahoma City just because I've never been there before. I've spent some time in St. Louis, and I went to college in Columbia, Missouri, about an hour and a half from there. So I've been to St. Louis before. So just for the sake of mixing things up and something new, I'll say Oklahoma City.
All right, maybe Husker fans will check that Thunder website, see what their home schedule looks like around say March 19th, 21st, something like that. We'll be watching today on January 17th with Nebraska and Northwestern in action out there in Evanston, and covering it for the World Herald, doing a great job this year as always. Wilson Moore, thanks a lot for the time, Wilson. And as you can see, my hat, the weather outside is making me pine for the days of softball this summer.
It's closer than it seems. It's closer than we realize.
Yeah, always on the hot corner for us here on Husker Hour. Thanks for the time, Wilson.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yep. All right, there he goes.
Thanks,
Wilson Moore, good stuff. And this week, more than any, Nate, I think is indicative of just how impressive this season has been for Nebraska. I know we got to get to our break, but Vandy loses a game that nobody thought they would lose to Texas. And I know Kansas is still, Allen Fieldhouse is what it is, but this is a down Kansas team. Iowa State got destroyed, having gone in there unbeaten and having destroyed Purdue on their own right. So Iowa State and Vandy still good teams, but it just speaks to the consistency and the high floor that this Nebraska team has this year.
Yeah, it's just tough to maintain it every single night, home and away, midweek, tough road trip. There are a lot of challenges in trying to go through a college basketball season undefeated. So far, Nebraska's tackled them.
Yeah. Well, hey, since Wilson led me into it saying they're going to get a 2 seed, I got to play it again. I mean, it's coming, folks. Oklahoma City. It's like It's like a 6.5 hour drive, people. I do have a piece up on Husker Max about this. Check your Airbnbs and Verbos. Check the hotel situation. Get that group text fired up. Let's paint the town red, people. We're getting there. We're getting there. All right. We're getting to the end of the show. We'll get you wrapped up and ready for your weekend right after this on the KLIN Husker Hour.
You're listening to the KLIN Husker Hour. Executive Travel Talk is next on 1499.3 KLIN. Giving you a complete review of the Huskers news this week. This is the KLIN Husker Hour on Lincoln's Husker Radio, 1499.3 KLIN.
Big thanks to Wilson Moore, who just joined us talking some Husker hoops. If you missed that or any part of the show, we talked a lot about Husker football and the transfer portal. Make sure you check out the KLIN Husker Hour Facebook page. We're on the YouTube for KLIN as well with our StreamYard. You can get subscribed to the podcast. You can also go to KLIN.com. Nate, Husker women, tough loss against Michigan State with some late turnovers. They don't play again until Wednesday, but right now they're trying to hang on to that ranking. They're still in the top 25, but tough loss.
Yeah, it just didn't take good enough care of the ball on the road. They've lost 4 out of 6, but the 4 losses to ranked foes, the long time off, plus an unranked opponent ahead should be a nice time for them to regather themselves and get going again.
Yeah, you do hope so. They're going to have a good finish to the season. This has been a really difficult stretch, as you mentioned, with those ranked teams. Husker men, as I mentioned, they're in action here this afternoon. It's a 3:00 tip-off, and you'll hear pregame coverage right here starting at 2:00 with Kemp Pavelka and Coach Jeff Smith. Nebraska goes for 18 in a row and 22 straight. What is this world we are living in, folks?
Woo.
It has been a fun ride. We'll see if they keep it going later on today. Thanks to Wilson Moore, Kenny Larrabee for getting us up on the StreamYard. For Nate Rohr, I'm Cole Stukenholtz. Go Big Red.